Just want to share today something that I was told really within the first couple weeks of being diagnosed, and I didn't really understand. And it just kind of came to me this morning how important this is and how maybe some of you haven't heard it. Managing Addison's disease does get easier. I know that sounds totally impossible, and for some people it will be a lifelong struggle to get it exactly right. However, understanding your body and the changes and the new needs that it has does get easier, I promise. When I was first told that at my very first Addison's disease support group meeting, I had just been introduced to the idea of stress dosing, and I was just like, how much do I do? How often? How will I know? And everybody's answer across the board was, you'll figure it out. You'll get it. You'll get there. And I remember at the time that answer was so infuriating, and I didn't understand how I was going to ever know how much medication to take to work through certain things, but that was the answer I kept getting. And so I kind of just kept pushing that in the back of my mind and feeling really frustrated and overwhelmed about this whole new medical condition that was really like a new job, a full-time job that required full attention. However, I had another full-time job and many other little jobs. So it was just, my plate was overloaded. And I just remember it feeling impossible. But I am here to say that it's 3 years later, which now 3 years feels like really no time at all. But when I look back, it seems like forever ago to the condition that I was in and how I was feeling. But in reality, that time has gone by pretty fast. And in 3 years, I have learned so much about my body, and I understand so much more than I ever thought possible. Even as someone who is a yogi and someone who is very in tune with their body and how their body works, it's like I uncovered a whole new level of understanding in my body by just being present in it, just taking notes, just being patient, and taking the time and energy to find out what works for my personal body, what doesn't, and what supports my journey along the way. So it does take time and it does take energy, which is not something that we feel like we have, especially when you're low cortisol, you're not feeling well. It feels like forever that you're stuck in that pain or in that mindset. But the thing that I always tell myself over and over again, and I always used to tell my kids when I was a yoga teacher to them, was that, we are the sky. We are this big, vast, massive sky. And weather comes, clouds come through, and we may not always like them. They may not always feel good. They may not always bring positive thoughts, but we know that those clouds are not forever. They will come through. They will pass. It's just in this moment. And as soon as I was able to acknowledge that these pains, that these frustrations, that these situations or days in bed were not going to be forever, it was so much more doable. And then they became fewer and far between. And yeah, I really have learned how to listen to my body, to say no and be okay with it and not attach the guilt to it when I have to cancel plans or monitor my body and do something totally different than I maybe would have planned on. But it is well worth it for all the time and all the energy and the note taking. And I know it seems like a lot right now, but it's going to get easier and become second nature. And pretty soon, you almost don't even have to think about it. Like for the last year, I don't even have to wear an alarm to take my medication. I used to do the Fitbit, and then I used to do the Bella Beat, and then I used to do the alarm on my phone, and I always seemed to be missing the alarms, I felt like. But now my body is so in tune that I barely even look at a clock, especially now that I don't have a full-time job, and I can always tell. I'll be like, oh, it must be 11:50 or something because I'm starting to feel lower. And I'll look at a clock and boom, it's time for a pill. So it does get easier. And I know that's hard to hear and hard to swallow, but just from another Addisonian struggling with not just Addison's, but also with osteoporosis and vitiligo, which may not be something that is impacting me every single day and every single moment. But in the long run, those conditions are still with me and affecting everything else in my body. So from one chronic illness warrior to another, it does get easier. Just as long as you're being kind and gentle and patient with yourself and going slow and reaching out and asking for help when you need it, because it's okay to ask for help. That's what helps build us up so that way we can be present and strong in the world. But know that you're not alone, and it does get easier. You will get in tune with your body, and you will have all the tools that you need. It just takes time and patience. But as always, thank you so much for being here, and share if there's anything that helps you along your journey so that way we can support one another as we continue to grow.